music for this show specifically. Hey, everybody. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us in our Thrive and Edu community. Hey, Rachelle, how are you doing?
Hey, Melody. I'm doing great. It's another Monday. Again, here we are together. So just excited to talk today with our guests and see what everybody's been up to.
Yeah. And how is before we bring up our guests, how has your day been going?
Oh, it's definitely been a Monday. I think I said that last Monday too. It's good. It's always a good day to get back and talk to the students and see how the weekend was and dive right into everything again. But it had its technology troubles today, and it's good that I have like 3 computers going at the same time. So, but it's been a good day. It's going fast, and as always, this is the highlight of my Monday is getting to see you and talk.
Oh, that is so sweet. Same for me. And look, we even dressed a lot alike.
I know.
Black. Woohoo! Awesome.
Yep.
We didn't even do this, guys. We didn't even coordinate. Well, that is so great. And whether you're joining in from Facebook, our community, or Twitter, thank you so much for joining in today. Please let us know how you're doing. Drop a comment. We'd love to hear how you're doing. And now, without further ado, let's introduce our guests today. All right. How are you ladies doing? Rachelle, I'll let you do the honors.
Yeah, so excited to have Bree and Lainie here to talk with us today. Very active in education, passionate educators, parents, educators, presenters, you name it. They are very involved in a lot of different areas of education. And so happy to have them join us, and I will let them introduce themselves, and I will start with Bree.
Well, hello. Hey, y'all. How are you doing? I am Brianna Hodges, and I am super thrilled to be here and hang out with you fabulous ladies this afternoon. I am a strategic storyteller. I am an educator and a mom, and I am also the national advisor and national faculty member for Future Ready Schools, working specifically with instructional leaders. Former English teacher, former district administrator, and just the highlight of my world right now these days seems to be co-host to the one and only Lainie Rowell for Lemonade Learning. So I'm going to toss it over to you, and let's learn a little bit about Lainie today.
Oh my, Bree, you are the best co-host ever, and the feeling is completely mutual. I adore our time together. It's such a highlight. Hopefully we'll get to talk more about that soon. I'm Lainie Rowell. I am an educator and author. I get to speak all over the world lately via Zoom more than anything else. But and I also am on retainer. Basically, I'm a consultant for Orange County Department of Ed in their Leadership Institute. So excited to be here.
Yeah, and it's great to have both of you. And I was lucky to get to talk to you last Friday as well with the Parent Square Learning Network with our Friday Five. So thank you for joining in again so soon after. And I can't wait to talk about your Lemonade Learning podcast, which I enjoyed listening to for the first time back in June. And yeah, so anybody has questions for any of us or wants to talk about the podcast, questions for Lainie or for Bree, please drop them into the comments.
Yeah, and ladies, will you tell us how you started this Lemonade Learning podcast?
I'm gonna let Lainie start with that one.
So I'll start with a confession, and that is I am a very classic overfunctioner. And when stuff went down, I'll watch my language, but when stuff went down in March, my overperformer, what did I say? Anyways, what I tend to do is I go into high gear. And I started I'm going to take care of this. My kids are going to be great. We're going to be doing everything. There's going to be learning. There's going to be yoga. There's going to be this. And I, as an overfunctioner, I started posting things online. And my good friend Bree saw this, and I had fooled her into thinking that I had figured it all out. And she reached out and she's like, let's talk. How are you figuring this out? And then my immediate reaction was, wow, I'm really mismanaging my message out there, because if people think I figured this out, I'm doing, a great job of curating a perfect life, but that's not at all how it was. Let's talk. And then, the moment I started talking to Bree, I just suddenly felt like the weight of the world had been taken off of me, and she's so brilliant. And I just thought, you know what? Let's do a podcast, because I want the world to hear Bree, and I would not have had the confidence to do it without her. So Bree, I don't know. That was my side of how it happened. I was just super happy to hitch my wagon to Bree.
Well, you were too kind, because I definitely did. I reached out to Lainie and said, holy smokes, like my world is falling apart. Like and it was definitely hard. I know that all of us on this chat right now are, we're pretty strong in our world. Like we can handle it when it comes to blended, to online, to integrating technology, strong focus on pedagogy, all these different pieces. And we work with other people on how to do this. And then all of a sudden, here I am working with my own precious children. And I thought I was going to lose my ever-loving mind. And I just could not wrap my head around, how to get things back on track. And I did. I saw some of Lainie's amazing posts and was like, I need this in my world, right? So I reached out, and yes, as Lainie said, we just kind of talked through it, and it was that idea of, sorry, how the Zooms are, right? We got to wave to people off of the set. So I was. Sorry, my train of thought totally gone, off the rails. And I decided that it was one of those things where if I'm struggling with this and I know what all these tools are, right? Like I know what Google Classroom is, I know all these different pieces, and I am inside Classroom, as I know how to do this. How are parents, quote unquote, normal parents feeling about this right now and trying to struggle through it? And so Lainie, she said, like, this is something that we really want to talk about. How do we do this? How do we get this information out there, especially early on, right? Everybody was we had no real answers, no idea day to day what's going on. And Lainie said, what do you think about doing a podcast? And I was like, well, I mean, I've been on lots of podcasts, but I've never done one from the ground up. But hey, we have the Google Box and we have YouTube. So sure, let's see if we can figure it out. And so that was kind of the rest has been history. And we just, when we first started, we thought, if anything, at least this will be an opportunity for us to just kind of be transparent and build that community of nobody has all the answers. What's happening in your world? What's happening in my world? And we can at least commiserate and know that we're not in this alone, because, we've got life giving us lots of lemons all the time. And so how can we, take this and make the positives come to light? And I told her, as somebody from the South, of saying that lemonade is always best when it's together. Learning, we know, is better together. And so why not put it all together and have lemonade learning? So there we go.
Yeah. And it's like, if you listen to the first few episodes, it's raw documentation. There's laughter, there's tears. The tears are mostly from me. But it's real. We don't really edit. Bree is our graphic designer. She does all the beautiful, beautiful work with that. I add a little bit of sound at the beginning and the end, and we really focus on making sure captions are available so it's accessible. Other than that, there's really no editing. So you do, it's more than one episode that I cry, I'll just say that. But yeah, so that was how it started.
I love that.
Wow. I do too. And I'm just curious, what is your favorite episode so far? If someone was going to tune in for the first time, which episode do you think they should really start
you have more than one kid. That's not fair. This is like picking your favorite child. I mean, they're all so different and from different perspectives. I mean, early on, it was a lot of Lainie and I unpacking everything, of just what is this experience? And so I think that some of those are my most favorite episodes, because it's different when you hear someone else. And even though you have similar feelings, you're able to process it a little bit more when somebody else is sharing that information. Not that I'm saying, oh, this is what you should do, but you recognize that you have answers that you didn't feel like you had before. And so I think that was one of those pieces where I would feel completely and totally helpless and at my wit's end. And then we start having this conversation. And at the beginning of every one of our episodes, we start with our sweet and sour. And so we try to find what's something that's really, been sweet about that week. And since we've talked, and then we try to, also talk about a sour that's in there. And sometimes we talk about the sour first and we end with the sweet. And sometimes we start with the sweet and then it moves over into the sour and then into our conversation. But it's been such a good opportunity for me to remember that anything, whether it's a pandemic or it's new curriculum or it's new kids moving into a school that they don't have friends and you're trying to kind of connect them, or it's a tragedy that's happened in your community, or any sorts of things that happen, like the alarms don't go off and you didn't have your mindset in the right place whenever you walk into your classroom. As educators, we are constantly taking these challenges and finding a way to push forward and get things to where we're going. And that's one of those pieces that has really stuck out with me throughout our experience and through the many, many, many more episodes that are yet to come. I have really enjoyed, not that I don't love talking to Lainie. I talk to Lainie more times than I talk to most of my family members every day. But it has been lots of fun in the last few episodes that we've been bringing people into, let them pull up a chair and have a conversation with us. And so it's always good to get beyond your own thinking and your community and bring in some outside voices, if we can call them that. I mean, they're all still really good friends, but that's been my experience. So I'm not going to name which one's my favorite, but I'm just going to say those are my favorite parts, I guess.
Yes.
Yeah.
The guests have been amazing. Our very first one was Dr. Katie Novak, and she imparted such knowledge. We ended up breaking it into 2 episodes. Wow. And so really, we've been so lucky. And honestly, we are unapologetically unscripted, but we've been super lucky the timing of our guests, because to have Katie talk about UDL as people are thinking about how do we start this year. And then we've had like really timely guests. And can I just give a little spoiler, Bri, about who we're releasing an episode for tomorrow?
Yes, please do.
Yes.
So tomorrow, well, real quick, tomorrow is the first day of fall, correct? Didn't we look this up? I think yes. I hope that's correct. Okay, now go ahead.
It is. I know. Wouldn't that be terrible? We planned a whole release around what tomorrow is, the first day of fall. The name of the episode is Fall Back in Love with Teaching. And it's Stacey Roshan, who's the author of Tech with Heart, and she's amazing. And honestly, Bri and I got off this call, off the Zoom, off the recording, and we're like, oh, we're going to get this out fast. Like, teachers need to hear this ASAP. And so we also have Rachelle coming up, and we're very excited about that. So, I mean, we have really good guests. And so, yes, I'm with you, Bri. I love talking to you, and I will always talk to you a lot. Bringing that extra voice is super helpful.
We're kind of like family. You have to talk to me now, but it's when we bring like other people over that we're like, yay, we have guests today. So it'll be fun.
So true.
I need to do that. Like, I've been doing my own, like you, I say I've been on a lot of podcasts, but I started my own a year ago, and it's just me talking to myself and answering my own questions. And it's completely unscripted. And there are no edits. It's just, I sit down, I record it, I go, and I say, if anyone wants to be a guest, but I haven't had anybody yet. I've had a couple people say, oh yeah, but then just with scheduling, it didn't work out. And honestly, for me, I do it just to share ideas, but it's how I reflect, I think. And I just work through my own experiences or whatever frustrations, because I know other people are feeling the same thing. But going back to your podcast, I will say that one of your first episodes, and I can't remember which one, I know it wasn't like your first or second, but there was one that was talking about, like, you're just sharing your frustrations. And that's what I liked so much about it. It was just, you're being real. Like, this is what it's like as parents, as educators, back and forth, the talk between both of you. I remember I was walking, listening to it, because that's when I listen to my podcast. I get these notifications, and I really enjoyed it. And so I hope people will check it out. But I also noticed that you shifted then to, like, not just the two of you, but to having guests. And any specific reason you did that, or it just kind of like happened?
I really thought people would get tired of hearing me. No, I'm just kidding. It was really, Bri, I'll let you jump in, but it really came down to, like, we just knew it happened right before the school year started. And we just really felt like there were some voices that absolutely needed to be heard. And Rachelle, I love how you talk about, for me, podcasts feel very intimate, like someone's there with you having a conversation. And so I personally like the style of your, like, stream of consciousness, where I'm getting to listen to you on your podcast kind of reflect. And so that's, to me, that's great. I mean, if you want to guess, Bri and I'll come on. But it really, for us, it was that timeline of just like, okay, well, now we're through phase one of crisis, if you will. Now we need to get into this other one. And we have real questions. And it's very intentional to bring these people in so that they can share their expertise through the lens of this, like teaching in this pandemic. So again, Katie, what does that look like? And we had Jimmy Casas on, and we've had so many great people. We had Henry Turner on, talking about where the overlap in UDL and being an anti-racist educator is. So we've had like really timely guests who are really good at taking their expertise and sharing it through the lens of what's happening in our world. And so I think, Bri, I don't know, was that why you, again, we're not real scripted, folks. There's no master plan. We are figuring this out as we go.
Yeah, we're beta testing a lot of stuff right now. But I think that's to echo a lot of that. You know, I think I always say that I'm a strategic storyteller, you know, and I also say that I'm always an educator. I'm a huge believer that every single person in the world is both of those things. Every single person is an educator, right? Like our mechanics, our doctors, our guy at the fast food restaurant, you know, all of us are taking our information and they're communicating that to someone who doesn't have that information to better understand it, right? So all of us are in that educator role at some point in time. And then with that, we're also always in that storytelling role, because you can't have learning without story. That's how we make sense of it. That's how we connect it. We're not talking about once upon a time, you know, stories. We're just truly talking about how the biological nature of our brain and the neuroscience of how it works. And so both of those things rely on conversations and rely on perspectives. And, you know, I think for me and Lainie, I'm just going to go ahead and say for Lainie too, because I know that we've had this conversation and we agree on this, is that it's not no one has the one answer, right? Like there's no one ring to rule them all. Like there's not a specific, if you do this, this is how we will educate our children during COVID-19. And so I think it was so important for us to make sure that conversation was coming to the top, that it wasn't just, this is Bri and Lainie's take on how the world, you know, if you would just listen to us, the world would be perfect. And instead, we really wanted to bring in, you know, all of these different perspectives of it. And, you know, from, like we said, from both educators, from parent lens, from, you know, administrator lens, all those different things. Because if you put that hat on, you're constantly looking at the situation through a different perspective, right? Like, you know, for me as an educator, I always loved being in the same district as my children, because it really gave me a sense of purpose, right? Like with everything that was happening, I had these two kids that I could look into their eyes and know this is why I want this to happen for them. That said, it also is that part where I might know the idea behind it, but the you know, the implementation of it might look different than what the intention was. And so looking at that through that parent lens and understanding what that communication looks like for that, because sometimes we forget about how to communicate that with the parents because we're communicating it with the students, but we're not, you know, we sometimes miss some of those steps, was always one of those things that I wanted to look at it from each one of those perspectives. And that to me has been what bringing in these guests have done is, you know, whether it's looking at it through a principal's lens, whether it's looking at it through a father's lens, whether it's looking at it through a mother's lens, or, you know, a person who is, you know, has all of these children that are theirs because they're in their classroom. You know, there's so many different ways to look at this because every single person has that educator heart, and we're trying to, you know, keep that forward and keep that, you know, first most in our minds.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. I thought Melody was going to say something.
Sorry, I know I am. I'm like writing down stuff. I love it. And then I muted myself just in case somebody walks in. I'm sorry.
You know what? Like when Melody and I when we started doing this, it was just her and I talking, and she brought on first couple of guests. And I was like, at first I thought, I don't know how I feel about this, because I really like the time with Melody and our back and forth. But we're not that, well, she's interesting. I'm not that interesting, but together, But I think we have really good conversations. So I've enjoyed bringing different people on, and just you learn so much by hearing each other in the stories, and it's different things that you didn't necessarily think of. Now I'm thinking, maybe I definitely need to have some guests on my podcast. Maybe you'll be so tired of talking to me, the two of you at this point, that you'll be like, you know what, we got somebody else booked here for next week. But I'm enjoying listening to like why you started it, what made you kind of transition to having some guests on it, what it does for you in terms of learning. And it's always good to like have guests on and learn from your experiences. So, and Melody, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're fine. Like I've been writing down furiously. Just I have a few questions if you don't mind if I ask. I don't mean to like shoot it off into the interview, but
I was going to say, I feel like I should like be prepared.
You've just sparked my curiosity. I'm curious, like how close are you physically? Like, are you in the same city? Where are you guys?
We're not even the same time zone. Bree's in Texas and I'm in California. So I know a lot of people think like Bree's my next door neighbor and I will go over and borrow a cup of sugar. No, we are not. We are emotionally close. We are not physically close.
How did you find each other?
How everybody does on the Twitters, on the internet, right? Like that's what we're. I mean, it's so funny. Like, do you really, if you went back in time, like 10 years ago, 15 years ago, would you have ever thought that most of your conversations would be like, well, I met this person on Twitter? Like you never said that. Like it would have been something embarrassing, right? Of like, oh yeah, I met somebody online. But that's how all of our conversations start. And it's so funny because we have like these incredible relationships with people. And then you're like, I've never met them in real life before.
Have you guys met in real life?
We have.
But it was in December. It was at a Future Ready event. And I knew Bree through social media. And do you ever have that awkward, like, I know them online. Should I like go up and say hi to them? Like I actually know them? Are they just gonna be like, wow, your profile pic is like super enhanced. You can recognize you.
You just nailed it, Lainie. That's like my worst fear. But I've packed on the pounds in the last few months. Like I promise you that my profile pictures are like legit. I didn't even use a filter, but I have not been good to myself this last few months.
I think we've all maybe deteriorated during COVID-19. Like, I feel like I'm going to not take another photo the rest of my life. It's like, I do not exist post-COVID.
But I will say, don't you guys feel like how do you, I want to throw this to the group real quick, not to jump in on your question time. We'll get back to those. But I do want to ask like just this one question. How do you handle this whenever people go, hey, do you know so-and-so? And you only know them through social media because like, they'll be like, hey, do you know them? And I'm like, well, yeah. I mean, online, but like, it's one of those where do you even distinguish anymore between, yes, because I don't like, I'm like, no. They're great. I know Melody. I've never met her in real life, but I know Melody. Like she lives in Alaska now. She's got kids. Like I know your whole life. Like,
I know it's so nice meeting you in real life. Like I feel like this is about as real as it's going to get. And I've been so flustered today. So I appreciate you all being so patient with me. My brain was completely.
If this is you flustered, girl. Wow. Yeah. Good on you.
I'm like, okay, I'm just ready to give Rachelle all of my information. Like you might have to be me today. No, I don't actually, I think that's a good question. And I don't distinguish anymore because I do feel like I have some close friends that, like I will just throw my friend Erin out there. She's an EduMatch author. I feel like we talk all the time, and even Rachelle, we were talking all the time before we met in real life. Yeah. So I don't know if I distinguish anymore. Do you guys distinguish?
No.
I mean, as long as I've actually had like real interactions with them, then yeah, I consider them friends. We're all family now because we've done this. This is more than
right. Yeah. That's true, though. I mean, like there are, I think maybe for a time I might have said, oh, I met them through, or if somebody brings it up and says, oh, well, how do you know? I mean, how do you know Melody? She's in Alaska. And it's like, I don't know. You got to trace back. But when you do meet, I mean, the first time I met Melody for face to face, it's like we went to Nashville together for 5 days. And I mean, Linnell and I had a whole day before Melody was like on.
We better like each other.
I know. Yeah. For 5 days. But
Oh my God, Melody, off air sometime, we'll have to catch up. My dad grew up on a homestead in Alaska. That's the second time I've mentioned that recently, but I had to get that in there. He would stick a moose on his sister. He lost cars into frozen lakes. That man lived a life. We'll have to chat about that sometime.
That was your dad?
That was my dad.
Wow.
Legit.
Yeah. It's really not hard to imagine that, to be honest. I mean, we live right outside of Anchorage, but I have friends now that are in the bush, and there's just it's crazy because we're in the United States, Alaska's the United States, but like when we talk about equity issues, I have friends here in Alaska that do not have Wi-Fi. Their kids, their students don't even have running water in their house. Yep. So Wi-Fi is not, they have bathhouses still, things that I read about in my romance novels, because I was huge on romance novels, historical romance. Like, I just think this is like happening in Alaska. So yeah, I'll believe every single story that you tell me. It's crazy, but yeah, it's phenomenal.
Definitely there's pockets of But Alaska was actually one of the early adopters of online learning in some parts, not necessarily everywhere. But, that's like a great state to point out, like, they had to figure it out because there's so many remote people. And so I always thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, it's mixed. I mean, I think that it's a lot like the lower 48. It's just that
I love a conversation that includes the lower 48.
Right. It's just not like Wi-Fi. It really is not everywhere here, you know? And even mine today was going out. Like, I didn't even know if I was going to be able to join. It was just,
that happens with Bree sometimes.
all the time. Small town. We were having that conversation. I'm in a small town, but we also have a university here. And so I'm like, it's college kids' faults. Like, they all came back and now they're taking up all the Wi-Fi and we don't have it anymore. So it's crazy, but yeah.
Bree, where are you in Texas?
I'm southwest of Fort Worth. I'm in a little town called Stephenville. And so look, she knows that because it's the Kevin Bacon of Texas. Everybody knows somebody who knows somebody from Stephenville. So it's kind of funny.
That's so funny.
I feel like we have totally taken some like roundabout walks on this conversation today. This is what it's like with us.
Yeah. Right, and you know what? And it's not even Thrive o'clock. This happens. Yeah. But it never fails that somehow Melody's romance novels come up in every.
I think everybody should be reading romance novels.
It works its way in there every time. It's so funny. It's not even.
I'm just trying to normalize romance novels.
We are unscripted. Like, if anybody ever thought that this was scripted, there is no doubt whatsoever that there is absolutely no script.
No rules. No rules.
None.
Well, I have a question, and we're getting close to our time, but this is for all three of you. What has been your biggest aha through like March until now? Your biggest aha, and you can take a second to think about that while I continue talking. But like, we have all kind of used our platforms in a way to reach out to others because we are not people that like to be by ourselves, obviously. So I'm just curious, like, the things that have surprised you the most, whether it's a reflection that you've had or whether it's a person you've met, what are those things that just sticks out to you? And maybe it's the best part of the pandemic learning. Maybe it's the worst part. I don't know, but tell me your biggest aha.
Well, I'll go first if that's cool with you.
Go.
Oh yeah.
So first of all, let me just say that the highlight of it has definitely been with Bree. Like, that is like just to make it super personal, and then I'll take it like on a more like related to education. But seriously, Bree is processing things through, and I've done a lot of collaborative projects before, but this processing out loud and in a really raw way has been very out of my comfort zone normally, but I've kind of felt like the pandemic has kind of given me permission to fail forward in a way that I wasn't really good with. And then to connect that kind of to the bigger education community, I hope we all feel that way, because I have I've been involved in online learning for 15 years and much longer with traditional or face-to-face or blended or whatever you want to call it. And those worlds never really collided like they have. And to be really super clear, like, I don't really want to get confused that this is online learning. What's happening in most cases, it's still emergency remote. But what I'm hoping will come out of it, and I'm starting to see it, is this understanding of what's good to happen synchronously, what's good to happen asynchronously, and this my hope is that on the other side of this, we're super intentional in how do we honor the learners who do best in asynchronous, and how do we honor the learners who do best in the synchronous. So the asynchronous versus the asynchronous, and that we find a way to really rethink time and space to make the best of both of those opportunities, because we didn't ask for this. And certainly online learning has very much been about people who chose that, and this is not what's happening right now. But I do think I'm hearing it from teachers that they're like, well, I'm never going back to the old way of doing this. This has changed my life. I don't care if they say I can be full in, everyone can be hugging and kumbayaing in the morning. Like, I am never changing this part of it, because this is like really given some kids an opportunity to thrive, pun intended, in a way that has never been, happening before. So.
Wow.
Bree, what about you?
Yeah, thank you for sending it to Bree.
I was going to wait her out and see if she was going to go. So for me, it has been vulnerable support. And what do we mean by that? It's been that kind of knowing that we have to, I guess, like to Lainie's point of like, there's a lot of stuff that I would not have done, this being one of them, before, of processing out loud in a recorded situation where somebody's going to know and be able to replay what I've just said, because it would have been something that I would have really, really, really put a lot of stress on myself to make sure that I knew exactly how to do it and make sure that it sounded the way that I wanted it to be, so that I could be very intentional with my thought process as I go into it. And one of the things that I've noticed along the way, and there's since been a lot of reflection on this, is that in the span since the spring coming into it, that our time in social media has really greatly increased, right? And with that comes a lot of stress, right? Because we've already been hearing all the conversations over. People are they're not sure how to put themselves on social media. It presents the wrong information. Everybody's obsessed with this idea of perfection and yada yada yada. And while we do know that is certainly there, the time since the pandemic has shown that it's actually the opposite that's coming out, is that people they're tuning out to that perfect situation, and instead they're tuning into what's going on. How can I, learn from and commiserate and identify with this? People who would normally not walk outside without makeup and lashes and all this stuff are suddenly like they're without anything on, nothing on their face, and just having these raw conversations. We saw it all across, cable networks and news networks of people shooting from their house and just saying like, hey, this is it. Like, here's my phone and I'm going to set it up on my tripod and I'm just going to make it work. And so that has really impacted me in lots of different ways, especially as we've moved into the fall, because, working with districts, working with teachers, being that person myself, we've always put so much stress as educators on knowing the right way to do it, and knowing that we've got to be prepared. We have to have the answers. We know what's at stake if we don't have that, and we don't want to fail our kids. And we want them to, we know that we just have a few moments with them, really, and we want to make sure that we're impacting them in the best way. So we've got to really have our stuff under control. And instead, we're able to say, you know what, I'm not sure if this is going to happen either. Let's learn this together. And that's been a huge thing that I've personally learned, partnering with Lainie on this, that I've personally learned with my own children of not having answers for them, having really tough conversations with them and saying, we need to think about this. We don't have to have an immediate answer, but instead we can think about it and weigh out the ideas, and then just kind of go in the direction that we need to go, knowing that we can pivot, we can respond as best as we can to this. And I think that has been so very different, because for so long, specifically around being online, we focused so much on the online tattoo and it went from the digital footprint to the online tattoo to like you're forever on the internet. And with that, a lot of people, and rightfully so, right? Like, we still want to make sure that we're conscious of what we're posting, but it puts so much pressure and so much of perfection as the only option on that. And it's taken this time to kind of be okay with putting ourselves out there in a little bit different way.
Wow.
Focused so much on the online tattoo and the, you know, like it went from the digital footprint to the online tattoo to.
Sorry about that. I was listening.
I was like,
and Rachelle, I know I put you on the spot. I hope you don't hate me, but what is your, and I appreciate that so much. I love that you said, you know, vulnerable support. Yes, we are definitely that, Brianna. And I love, Lainie, that you said permission to fail forward. Like, I feel both of those things. Rachelle, what about you? What is your aha moment?
I don't think we have time for my aha moment. I think that I'm saved by the bell. No. Actually, the only thing that I could say that I was just thinking while they were talking to, and for me over the last however long this has been at this point, is just how thankful I am that I got out of like keeping myself in my classroom and I became connected, and what I would be doing now compared to like if I had never stepped out of my classroom, made those connections. And over the last however many months, had I not been connected, known you or Bri or Lainie or anybody else we've had here in this space, like it would be completely lonely, and I wouldn't know all of the different things that I know, or I wouldn't be realizing like, wow, you've been totally doing this wrong, because I've had conversations where people said, you know, you might want to rethink that, or like, what's the reason you're using this technology, or why are you trying to cram everything into that 42-minute period, or I mean, just different things that I'm getting from pushback from people in my network, friends, colleagues, you name it, even family too, telling me. So my big aha is just what a difference it makes when you have those connections and the support in a community. And it doesn't have to be all over the place and all of the things. It just needs to be at least something where you have somebody that you can connect with. So
that's beautiful. Yeah, I'm so glad you said that. That's absolutely beautiful. Well, with that, I do want to say to our guests, Lainie and Bri, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been phenomenal having you ladies on here, and I can't wait to check out your podcast. It makes me want to exercise, because that's when I listen to podcasts. It's when I'm exercising. So I need to. And I just want to thank everybody for joining in. Thank you, Dr. Tracy. She was joining in. Y'all have a great one. We'll see you on Friday. But until then, if your blog posts, anything that you've been sharing, please share it in our community. We are here together to network, but also to share ideas. And we appreciate you so much for tuning in. Everybody have a great week.
Awesome.
Bye.
Bye.
Oh, we have one more comment. I don't want to go off. Oh, Dr. Tracy says goodbye.